All right, traders, this is Christian from Hertz Tribeca Trade Group, and today is Monday, January 6th, and this is your end of day recap. Well, what a fun day to trade this was today. Really, some nice movers today. One of those days where I don't want to say like you lucked out or anything like that, but of the different scenarios that I went through when I put out the member weekend video, this was one of them that we could have gotten a rebalance right. Not a rebalance, a rebound right away, or it could be a multi-day type thing, and we basically got the rebound all in one day, as far as I'm concerned, anyway. And there's a lot of different things that we highlighted in the weekend video and the watch list that I put together that were kind of catalyst type trades that performed really well. So, it's really exciting to me, when I'm pretty early with finding, the cyber trades. I mean, we were out Friday morning, talking about how cyber could take off today. And if you look at how the whole group, and of course software too, which continues as we talked about in Friday's video, we talked about how software names just seem to be a hiding place, right? Where for growth, right? People just seem to migrate there. Those weren't the only sectors that really moved today. You could see again, this is a spreadsheet if you're not familiar with it. It is percentage change from open is in this N column. Again, I think it's always useful to see what rallies from the open, basically, right? Of course, performance in column AA is important, very important, most important for the day. But from where we start the day, especially today was open on the lows, basically closed on the highs, to see like what groups really outperformed and where the money gravitated and went into. But yeah, I mean, we really did well. We basically hit the nail on the head, and software too. I think the members of the trading room. I'm not going to mention any individual names because I didn't ask for permission to do so. But I'll tell you the strength of our room, right? I mean, traders were all over the software names catching the momentum on Friday, and they certainly carried through to today. Software was up 2% after the open today. Overall, finished up 1.17, but I mean the trading range that it gave you in some things actually opened up lower. That AYX that we got, I'll get into today's trades, but there was just some really nice plays that we highlighted in the watch list from this weekend that actually opened up in the red. So I went right to the playbook. I went right to everything that we talked about. I'll bring up my trades for the day. And we'll talk about today's option flow as well, because I know people like to talk about that. But as I said, this was the first thing that I was going to do was put on a little bit of a long SPX spread, even though I had mentioned in the weekend video that it could be a multi-day type pullback, and I highlighted a little bit of a playbook for that. But I said, hey, I'm going to risk a certain amount with going right into a little bit of an XPX call spread just in case we do come back. And even if it's a multi-day event, I've got obviously the whole week to do that. And I took that spread off today because I basically got what I was looking for. There was some questions in the room about, hey, well, I still feel like this could gravitate into something more severe in terms of the global or Mideast tensions. Sure, we don't have a crystal ball, so you take profits. You put on a calculated risk to reward setup where you're putting on something for $3.80, where the most you can make is 10. Now, of course, I'm not going to sit with that for 10 if it worked right off the bat, and it worked well right off the bat. So I was taking profits, and I took this thing off. Again, I could probably end up getting more for this, but I'm taking profits. That's in a few hours. What's the profit on that? That's 380. I can't do math right now. Minus 540, divided by 380. It's over 40% profit gains in a couple hours. So, why be extra greedy when we don't know what's going to happen overnight and so forth? So you can take 40% profits on a trade for a couple hours, on an SPX trade for a couple hours, and how can you not be happy, right? And I think, taking a step back and saying, hey, of course I could get $10, which is a bigger amount if we continue to rally. But again, I don't think that. I think people try sometimes to be overly. I don't want to say they try to be overly greedy, because that's not right. But they try to hit the home runs, and I don't think you could take something off for 40% profits and live to fight another day without having any risk on in that trade, right? So that was really nice. Okta was the trade that we went over on Friday. Obviously, you could have picked any one of these names, but Okta is a name that I like a lot. Finished up. I mean, look at this thing. I even took this thing off a little bit early too. But hey, again, when you're holding something, overnight into the environment that we're in. But I mean, look at that move. Just very, very impressive. If I didn't say this in the beginning of the video, obviously everything that we're going over is for information purposes only. Here's a little risk disclaimer. But you could see again the performance. From where we were this morning, right? It was kind of a risk-off pre-market open. But you could see after the open, it was pretty risk on. Bonds sold off, TLT, gold was off, silver, VIX. Look at the VIX down. I mean, it's pretty amazing. The VIX was down 10%. For the day, finished down, again, 1%. It's kind of what we've been seeing recently when we have these VIX spikes, is they're pretty short-lived. I like what I was reading Helene Meisler's column today, and she was saying that the put call ratio, we're just kind of in a different market. I think she was saying how even Friday didn't get any major fear into the market. We didn't see the put call ratio getting really high, but I don't think. Clearly based on what we saw today, hindsight 2020, I don't think we really need to get super sentiment to go one way. As long as it kind of cools off and burns off some overbought levels, I think there's a lot to learn from that. So again, looking at these groups that performed pretty well, the sectors, a lot of them, right, are probably a little bit more sheltered from. I was going to say trade war, but I guess we're behind that, or we're well, I don't want to say we're through that, because anything could happen. That's not officially signed. But now it's more, global tensions. And these are the same. These are also groups that are, you know, that are less sensitive, I would say, to those groups. Again, I don't think you can basically hide in any name, but I think if you're going to go into some names, I think those are probably a better place to be. And then interesting, look at the names that underperforms. The gold miners, did finish positive for the day, but gave back all the gains. Aerospace and defense, so kind of just confirmed, gold selling off, the VIX coming all the way in, oil coming all the way in. By the way, look at oil. We also highlighted this. A great example of a virgin point of control. What is a virgin point of control? If you're not familiar, it is where a lot of volume has previously occurred, but price hasn't revisited. Kind of like a gap. Kind of like how a gap works. And you can see, here was the one that price really seeks out. Once it's trading out of a range, it tends to go back to where there's a lot of buyers and sellers have previously met up. That's at a point of control. It becomes much more significant when the point of control has never been revisited before. Again, that's what's known as the virgin point of control. So again, look at this. So here again, like, to me, that's not a place to add. It kind of gives you a guide of like, you got one of these in front of you. That's not a place I would want to chase. So kind of staying out of that, and moving on to some other things, I think really worked well. Also, like, if you look at one name that I was looking at in this aerospace and defense, L3 Harris Technologies, which I was in this trade on Friday and I took it off. I mentioned I took that one off a little bit early too, for nice profits. But look, that took out a VPOC. That's not a place where I want to add or start a position. That's where I want to be taking profits. We saw that in a lot of the software names. Salesforce, this was a name that Whoa, what's that? That's the wrong symbol. Uh, Look at this thing, close on the absolute highs. So now you have to ask yourself, would you get involved after a day like this? It depends on your time frame, right? You kind of want to see this happen out of a range, right? You want to see high volume. You want to see a convincing move. So I know when a name is up 4%, sometimes people are like, oh, geez, I missed it, right? I was on CNBC a few months ago, and I got, people were dogging me because um, I mentioned how AMD just broke out back here. I think that was like just right out of here. And they're like, oh, I got a lot of people who said to me, they're like, oh, well, it already made the move. That's it. The move's over. Yeah, look at where it is now. Uh, it's up, you know, it's up all the way to $48. So again, I think you want to see, going back to Salesforce, which I started a position today, and the damn thing, I could have been taking it off for profits. I left it on. And maybe if you get like an inside day tomorrow, like that would be a great place to attack, I think. But keep in mind, zoom out. This Salesforce, which got a positive broker note, but it was already leaning that way coming into today, and that's why I had it on the watch list for today. We had talked about it in the trading room. I was asking people, do you think this is the time that Salesforce could actually break out? Keep in mind, this thing has been in a range for a long time. I think this goes up into the right further, is my take on Salesforce. And then also, if you look at the weekly bar, which again, it's just Monday, we don't know how the rest of the week is going to show itself for this weekly bar, but just looking at the pattern and looking at the breakout, unless this thing comes all the way in, that's a really nice buy signal in something. So yeah, I bought, and I got a little bit lucky with this because I bought in here, and the damn thing like took off like a rocket. What else? I mentioned Okta already. That was a nice play in the room. AYX. And then it just kept on going. Like this data dog that we got into last week, up 6.6% today. So, really, impressive. One that I had set an alert on, there's too many things moving on the open, was the CrowdStrike. I think CrowdStrike could have more to go as well. Now, this did take out, speaking of VPOX, this did take one of these out. Notice it backed off pretty decently. So now, I think what you could do is basically set your stop to somewhere around here if you like this name. Again, don't be worried that you miss these first candle moves. These names obviously could go just like I was showing with the AMD. It's great to catch a day where it's up like 8%, but in the grand scheme of things, if this thing ends up going up to say 70, right, you're going to want to say that you've got involved. Maybe not in the absolute high of today, but somewhere in the middle is okay. So don't let anybody tell you that, oh, like you missed it. This is just the first day above all the moving averages as well as above value, which I went over on Friday's video as well. All right, so I think option activity today, it kind of secondary. Again, if you're waiting for a lot of these signals to occur, there were, the data dog was really good, so I don't want to completely, downplay option activity because it has given us some really good signals. But a lot of these signals that we mentioned, and especially like going through our watch list for the weekend, they're not dependent on call activity. And I always try to mention that in these videos because I just think I think retail traders have gotten too dependent on option activity for them to give a signal. You could find signals in everything, and I think you'll find a lot of the times the option flow will come in late. But again, that's just my opinion. Here was, I'm happy to give the watch list that we sent out. Look at the performance, by the way. And again, this is why I get really, excited sometimes, because when you do the work and you spend, on the weekends, which is what I do, and I do the research, it really is nice when it pays off this well. This was the 27 names that I had on my watch list. And keep in mind, some names didn't work. Like I had some defense names in here, like KTOS, which finished down on the day. But overall, this finished up 1%. Divided by 27, the performance divided by 27 names. I mean, where the S&P was only up 38 basis points. So really, did the homework, helped a lot. Of the names on here on the watch list that did really well, BP was the one of the few energy names that I had on the watch list, which managed to hold the gains. Coupa Software, Salesforce, which was on our watch list, Datadog. Funny, I didn't have crowdsource on here, which would have helped the performance, but we went over that in the video. NTNX, which saw call buying on Friday, again, that was a good signal. Restoration Hardware, and again, these are all things that we highlighted. Pre-market. What I generally do when I come up with 27 names is I tend to narrow it down pre-market. So I sent these out pre-market. I started with AYX, from the watch list. Also CME and ICE, which I think did okay today. I was able to take one target in the CME trade. The AYX was just a beautiful trade because this thing started the day like down 1%. So caught it really nice. Restoration Hardware, which just was a coincidence. Also, what's his name? Citron went long today. Plan is another name that I think did pretty well today. But, and then we were off taking targets on a bunch of things today. And the AYX, I think, which is basically a day trade, which I'm holding the last piece, worked really well. All right, guys, that's it for today's video. Again, just one of those amazing days where, a lot of things happen to go right, and then you try to take profits and go back in a little bit, and increase that cash balance, and wait for the next really nice opportunity. Of course, I'm leaving runners on in a lot of things, but anyway, we'll go from there. Guys, have a great night. To be a member of Tribeca Trade Group, you could just go either to my regular Twitter page, or you could go to the private Twitter one. You can click on here. But again, I think that's the value, and that's the goal for me, as always, is to come up with these ideas before before the majority do. And I think mission accomplished again. All right, guys, have a great night. See you tomorrow.